Let's play a game. Would you want Beckham to play as a winger in your team today? Answer in the comments. If you said no, I'm assuming you said it because he's not the fastest, right? What if I told you that Beckham had played in the center midfield role in the 1999 Champions League final with Keane and Scholes absent? He even helped United win the final with 2 excellent deliveries. With the way modern football is, your wingers need speed and a lot of it. Beckham wasn't the fastest, so a career in the middle of the pitch would have helped Beckham reach new levels. A player who has a similar unstoppable crossing style is Kevin De Bruyne, and he plays in the middle of the park. I strongly believe Beckham would have been world-class in this role. He would be held in much higher regard if he played in the middle. It is 21 years since one of the most notorious football dressing room incidents of all time, when Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson kicked a loose boot towards the face of David Beckham. Both figures were already legends, both at Man United and in the Premier League in general. And it didn't take long for the story to be splashed all over the tabloid front pages. It is an incident that has never been forgotten. It likely never will be, probably because it's seen as the beginning of the end of Beckham's time at Man United. When icons collide, the tales reverberate through history, and that is very much the case with this one. The incident occurred after an FA Cup tie against Arsenal in 2003. Ryan Giggs had missed a glorious early chance to put Man United ahead, and within minutes they were behind. In the end, they lost 2-0, and Sir Alex Ferguson was understandably angry. It was Beckham's final year with the club, and Ferguson believed his work levels had dropped. Whether they had or not is obviously something that is still debated today. Beckham left the ground with stitches in a wound just above his left eye, yet he did not suffer the injury on the pitch. So what happened? There are contrasting stories, to say the least, but the short answer is that the wound was caused by a boot that Ferguson had kicked in the direction of Beckham in a post-match rage. Crazy, right? Join us as we uncover how Beckham could have become England's best midfielder ever. Brand Beckham is a phrase synonymous with a man who has built an empire on the back of a glittering sporting career. His reputation is further enhanced through his partner in marriage, Victoria, a 1990s British pop sensation turned fashion designer and entrepreneur. The pair's combined persona has seen them conquer the world, becoming one of, if not the most famous couple on the planet. It's a remarkable rise from humble beginnings, but perhaps as shocking is the fact that the first page of a Google search of his name yields no football-related results. It's hard to comprehend when you consider his achievements on the field. Yet it's clear to see Beckham has transcended and surpassed the mere realms of the beautiful game. However, it's this appetite for a celebrity lifestyle channeled through his tunnel vision of becoming a professional footballer that led him to succeed at Manchester United. Beckham enjoyed a career spanning 21 years, earning 115 international caps and winning 6 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, a La Liga title, 2 MLS Cups, 1 League One title, and a Champions League crown. From kicking a ball around Ridgeway Park to becoming a treble winner in 1999 and embedding his legacy stateside, this is a career that should be remembered and celebrated for pure footballing aesthetics. Born and raised in the East London suburb of Leytonstone, Beckham spent his formative years in England's capital playing football for nothing more than sheer enjoyment and cathartic release. He would spend many hours kicking a ball around the shrubbery of Ridgeway Park with his father David Edward Ted Beckham. A football fanatic himself, Ted had high hopes for his son, with David being the middle sibling in a family of 3 and the only boy. He went on to coach him for his first ever club, Ridgeway Rovers, imparting onto him his own coaching knowledge, but perhaps most significantly, his adoration for the family club Manchester United, his middle name Robert coming from Ted's admiration of Sir Bobby Charlton. Beckham reminisced in an interview in 2007 about how he was mocked at school when expressing his ambitions of a professional football career. They said, "What do you want to do when you're older?" I'd say, "I want to be a footballer." And they'd say, "Oh no, what do you really want to do for a job?" But that was the only thing I ever wanted to do. The youngster's talent quickly became apparent, with trials at Leyton Orient and Norwich City coming in swift succession. It was North London-based Tottenham Hotspurs, however, that managed to tempt a young Beckham to sign for their school of excellence. During this time, he would represent Brimsdown Rovers, where he would continue to excel, winning the title of the club's Under-15 Player of the Year in 1990. The youngster looked destined to climb up the Spurs' youth ranks before turning out for the Lily Whites' senior side in years to come. Funny how quickly things can change. Most 14th birthdays include eating cake, spending time with friends and family, and opening presents, such as a new phone or bike. Beckham spent his time in a corporate box wearing a shirt and blazer before being handed a tie. This wasn't just any tie, it had a complete red surface broken only by one adorning emblem, the crest of Manchester United Football Club. Beckham had spent the afternoon in the company of none other than Sir Alex Ferguson. He and the great Scot chatted at length over dinner before enjoying some belated birthday cake. Ferguson was aiming to coax Beckham into signing on as a schoolboy for United and hoped to convince him of the benefits of doing so. In truth, it took little persuasion. He was a boyhood United fan who had always dreamed of playing in front of the Old Trafford faithful, hearing his name echo around the iconic stadium. The only hesitation he held was the need to move away from his East London home and start a new life up in Manchester. After some deliberation, the Beckham household decided the pros far outweighed the cons, and he signed on the dotted line. After impressing as a schoolboy, Beckham shone in the Red Devils Youth Academy, helping lay claim to the FA Youth Cup in 1992 alongside the likes of Ryan Giggs, Nicky Butt, Paul Scholes, and the Neville brothers. A young Beckham scored in the first fixture of a two-legged final against Crystal Palace, which saw United victorious 6-3 on aggregate. His performances in the cup run led to a call-up to the first team, where Beckham made his senior debut as a substitute against Brighton in the League Cup. Another cup appearance against Port Vale would follow, along with the former academy product making his Champions League bow. However, to cement a more permanent place, he'd have to take his skills out on loan. Preston North End were the lucky club after an agreement was struck and manager Gary Peters jumped at the chance to take the shy 19-year-old on loan. At first, the young Londoner was skeptical. "I thought it was a sign that a club was trying to get rid of a player," he stated in his book, My World. But Sir Alex's thinking when sending him to the third division proved quite the opposite. The month in Lancashire shaped Beckham's early career. He was exposed to first-team football and given the responsibility for set pieces. Any young professional would have been excused for feeling the pressure, but not Beckham. He rose to the challenge, scoring 2 goals in 5 appearances, including one directly from a corner. The player, now back in Manchester and reinvigorated from his time just north of the city, was ready to make his league debut. A 0-0 draw with Leeds United in 1995 was the second time he had stepped onto the hallowed turf for a first division match, after representing United as a mascot 9 years earlier. He would go on to play a further 4 times for United in the 1994-95 season, which ultimately ended in disappointment with the side losing the Premier League by a solitary point to Blackburn and being bested 1-0 in the FA Cup final by Everton. The 1995-96 campaign would start in a similarly underwhelming vein as the Red Devils lost 3-1 to Aston Villa, and although Beckham got United's goal, the fans and media alike were far from impressed. With Ferguson offloading experienced personnel in favor of entrusting youth, Beckham saw game time aplenty, and it wasn't long before the naysayers and doubters became firm believers. The team took the league crown come May and brought the FA Cup back to Manchester too. The next season saw Beckham score the second most iconic goal of his career. With United leading 2-0, he spotted the Wimbledon goalkeeper Neil Sullivan off his line and attempted an audacious halfway line shot which soared over the helpless keeper and came crashing down into the back of his net. David Beckham had truly announced his arrival on the Premier League stage. He went on to help his team retain the league title and collected an individual accolade of PFA Young Player of the Year. Stylish, flamboyant, and a free kick master. A wonderful range of passing, a quick decision maker, creative, patient, and composed. Such superlatives could be about any number of brilliant players throughout football's history. Perhaps reading that statement and not the title of this video, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this will go on to discuss the brilliance and genius of Andrea Pirlo. However, I'm not talking about Pirlo. I'm talking about the deep-lying playmaker England never had, David Beckham. Sure, England had Beckham, from his debut against Moldova in 1996 to his final appearance against Belarus in 2009, but did England, and indeed every single team he played for, fail to see where Beckham's true talent lay? Did managers, other players, and even fans fail to notice that England potentially had our own version of Pirlo? This is not to imply that Beckham didn't have a great career. The Englishman won almost everything at domestic level, from winning the treble and numerous doubles with Manchester United in the late 90s, to winning La Liga with Real Madrid. Even when he moved to LA Galaxy to help kickstart football in North America, he won the MLS Cup. Amongst his status as a celebrity, it's often easy to forget that Beckham was a truly gifted footballer and was twice runner-up for World Player of the Year in 1999 and 2001. David Beckham has many great memories, especially that free kick against Greece. Beckham single-handedly took England to the World Cup in that match at Old Trafford. Still, when you consider the qualities Beckham had, it really is strange he never played in the center of the park for any meaningful length of time. Had Beckham been born Italian, he would undoubtedly have been played centrally. Other than the fact that the dominant formation in English football at the time was 4-4-2, meaning Beckham wasn't going to replace Scholes or Keane in central midfield, the only reason that it can be considered that Beckham played out wide was simply because of his out-of-this-world ability to cross the ball. Another factor hindering Beckham's progression into the center of the park was his 2003 move to Real Madrid as the final Galactico. Beckham was signed for what appeared to be financial reasons, though Beckham had not noticeably declined by this point and was forced into a team that already had Zinedine Zidane and Luis Figo as creative outlets behind Raul and Ronaldo. With this to consider, it is perhaps natural that Beckham was played out on the right, with some short-lived, unbalanced experimentation in the center, in a system that was never going to work. Had Beckham moved to Italy, with its love of 3-5-2 and wingbacks at the time, it seems likely that Beckham would have played in the center of the park. It is also possible to remember only the very simple things about David Beckham. If you ask a child today what David Beckham's best quality was, I'd bet 90% would say free kicks. Whilst this was undoubtedly one of Beckham's strongest attributes, to limit him to just being a good free kick taker does an injustice to how good Beckham was as a footballer. His long-range passing was sublime, much like Pirlo. He was composed and calm on the ball like Pirlo and was far more creative than many gave him credit for. Those of you who may still be sitting thinking this is nonsense, let me remind you that 10 years ago, Steven Gerrard, a former box-to-box marauding central midfielder, was converted to play deep-lying playmaker for Liverpool under Brendan Rodgers. I would say a player such as David Beckham was actually far more suited to that role than Steven Gerrard ever was. Beckham had better positional nous than Gerrard, compensation for his lack of strength defensively, had better long-range passing, and was more mobile than Gerrard in his later years. While Beckham may have gained fewer highlights on programs such as Match of the Day, he also wouldn't have bypassed his midfield quite as often as Gerrard did. For a player who was undoubtedly a global superstar, Beckham rarely showed his ego on the pitch, being a willing passer to those higher up the pitch than he was. Again, this is a vital trait for a midfielder. As a deeper playmaker, he cannot take the game into his own hands. Yes, he can control it from deep, as you would want him to, but his main responsibility is to deliver the ball to those higher up in more threatening positions. What's more, it's not as if Beckham's crossing ability would have been negated by moving into the center. All he would need to do is combine with the right or left-sided defender, something Beckham was always good at, before delivering one of his trademark crosses for the attackers. Being a deep-lying playmaker wouldn't have limited any of his strengths. It would have enhanced them. Usually, an opponent's left back or left winger would be given the responsibility of preventing Beckham from crossing the ball as much as he could, with no one to really combat this as he moved from the center of the park to the wing like what Trent does at Liverpool. Beckham would find himself in more space. David Beckham making free, unchallenged crosses, a terrifying prospect for opposition center backs and goalkeepers. It is certainly possible to argue that Beckham wasn't a world-class defender, so to put him in defensive midfield could have been a liability. However, this would be no different to the use of Steven Gerrard in that position, and Beckham would work far better with a more defensive partner than Gerrard did, holding his position in a double pivot and acting as the playmaker of the two. There were isolated glimpses of this ability as a central midfielder. On YouTube, there is a video of Beckham playing against Deportivo La Coruña in the middle of the park, acting much like a modern deep-lying playmaker. His distribution from a deeper position is absolutely fantastic, and the number of times he makes difficult passes to find Raul in dangerous areas and half spaces is staggering. He combines well with Zidane ahead of him, acknowledging the creative genius of the Frenchman and making the correct passes. He also gravitates out to the right every now and then to put in the unchallenged crosses mentioned. When you watch the performance in its entirety, Beckham looks like a composed, competent, and creative modern-day deep-lying playmaker. In a way, Beckham looks ahead of his time. The former England captain did play centrally at times during his stint at Paris Saint-Germain, but this was right at the tail end of Beckham's career when he had drastically declined, was much slower, and really struggled to cope with the speed of the modern game, particularly in a 4-4-2 that exposed him against Barcelona in the Champions League. Had Beckham been protected in some kind of 4-3-3, 4-1-4-1, or 4-2-3-1, his weaknesses would have been masked and he would still have been able to play the position. Furthermore, had his ability to play as a deep-lying playmaker been noticed much earlier in his career, Beckham would have gained greater experience in the role and would certainly have improved. In an alternative universe, David Beckham could have been England's answer to Andrea Pirlo and could have been the metronome to which England's band played from 1996 to 2009. Fans would still have all the great moments associated with Beckham, but he would have been even more influential and could easily have challenged for the position of England's greatest, certainly most influential footballer. Instead, David Beckham is remembered more as a global megastar and a talented footballer, rather than a player who was ahead of his time, playing a role which would come to be a necessity by 2010. What's more, if his ability in the middle of the park had been recognized, Beckham's peak would have lasted longer. Unfortunately, we'll never know. Now we only have mere glimpses of Beckham's real talent and potential as the deep midfielder England has desperately needed for almost 3 decades. Do you think Beckham would have been better as a central midfielder? Let us know below.